What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the afternoon weather update for Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. In this update, we're not only going to look at the short-term weather conditions across the country, but we are also going to look at the longer-term conditions that are expected. And in the shorter term, it's definitely more active than what we're going to see in the longer term. The longer term, going into next week, actually looks quieter and somewhat warmer for a lot of places. A lot of places are going to really warm up next week. So here's the national satellite picture. You can see our boundary that we just talked about this morning. It's still stalled from Texas on up into the Great Lakes regions. It's ever so slightly making some progress to the east. There's still a severe weather threat for today. Look at these tornado watches that are up from Arkansas, up into Michigan, Detroit metro area. You have tornado watches up right now. Here's the SPC. They maintained enhanced risk on the latest update. And the tornado threat's going to continue for several more hours. Eventually, it's just going to shift over to a severe thunderstorm threat as it gets closer to the eastern half of the enhanced risk. And as we head into tomorrow, there's only just a marginal risk from North Carolina up through to about Philadelphia region or Trenton, New Jersey. Taking a look at the GFS, this is something that we want to see here. And here's the GFS. The GFS continues to have the front slowed. And look at this area of draining that sets up in eastern Kentucky, central Tennessee, on back through to Texas. And as I continue this, you can see here, the system, I want to say on some modeling, not so much the GFS, but on other models, it's trending a little bit slower now. This is not good. And here's the GFS Saturday evening. You can see, even on the GFS, there's still a large area of rainy conditions down in the south. As we exit into Sunday, it tries to develop a low off the coast. But look at Georgia. Georgia does dry out. And as you can see here, unsettled weather continues in Florida. They kind of get this onshore flow. And with that, it just really stays unsettled into much of next week. And the southeast is one region that is going to be unsettled and potentially below average temperatures if you're down in Florida. Let's take a look at the Canadian model, shall we? And looking at the Canadian model here, you can see this front, it's still going to be slow to move, but the Canadian's a little bit slower than the GFS. So you can see we're now moving into Sunday, and you still have areas of precipitation in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and it doesn't fully clear until Sunday night, and even at that, you still have showers and areas of low pressure. Tries to get going here on Monday, and now we are at Tuesday, and let's take a look at the upper level pattern. You can see it tries to cut off completely, tries to cut off. You have a ridge that's going up over top, and then you have this upper level pattern which is just stalled, this upper level closed low that's just stalled over the Florida region. And look what happens in the west coast. You have this trough with a cutoff like system in the west, but in between the two you have this big area of ridging, which is going to allow for a major warm up next week for a large part of the country. Let's take a look at the surface again, and you can see here this is some pretty cold air out in California. So while California is going to be below average and Florida is going to be below average, in between we are going to have this wedge of really warm weather for next week, and you'll see that on the ensembles and on the forecast from the Climate Prediction Center going into next week. If I advance this a little further, we actually have to continue to watch this cutoff-like system. There's some indications that it could have tropical characteristics. I'm not expecting it to become a named system, but it's definitely going to be something that's going to be around for a while, and the models really don't know what to do with it. Let's go to last night's European. The 12s a year is not in yet, but let's take a look at last night's European. And you can see on the European, as we get into Saturday, the system remains stalled down south, and it also, look, you have this disturbed weather that just stays over Florida day after day after day, much of next week. And then eventually the European tries to send it up the coast as a weak area of low pressure with disturbed weather. So where this sets up is key. Areas to the north of this will actually have warmer temperature anomalies than areas to the south of this. Let's head over to the GEFS. Here's the temperature anomalies. And here we are now. As you can see here, we have these warm anomalies over the east, cold anomalies in the west, but watch what happens as I advance this in time. we get to the end of the week, it stays warm across the east. But look what starts breaking out here in the central states. Warmer anomalies. Then you have this southwest flow that sets up. And that really punctures in some warm air. Look at these warm anomalies for next week. Easter, for many, Easter is going to be warm. However, it's going to be unsettled in the southeast. And these warm anomalies eventually make their way east. The northeast, you're going to be above average temperatures. And any remaining snow that you have in Vermont, upstate New York, Maine, I think it's finally going to start to melt. Hey, you may see some green grass. That's good news, right? You want spring. I'm pretty sure you're tired of snow at this point, because the majority of the ski resorts up there after Easter, that's it. Whether there's still snow, they close down because, number one, they get run into a staffing issue, and number two, the season passes. They don't get as many people coming up to ski at that point, so there's no sense in staying open. But they do get some people for Easter, and just in time for this, look at this warm up here. This is, a significant warm up. We're now going into the end of next week, and it remains warm, and it also fairly quiet. Nothing major on the horizon. The only time frame we're going to have to watch, look as the anomalies try to work their way eastward. That's the next potential for severe weather. So you're going a whole week now without any major tornado outbreaks, just this unsettled weather in the south. It's going to be showers, daily thunderstorms. We're not talking major flooding, at least for the first part of it. I'll be fair. The first part of this outlook, yes, there could be some heavier rain. But as we get into Sunday and beyond, as of right now, the low pressure that's going to form, it's not going to be a major area of low pressure. It's just going to be more of the showery nuisance, not beach weather if you're on spring break in Florida. Unfortunately, after, say, about Thursday on through much of next week, if it's your turn for spring break, yeah, the weather's not looking good for that. I'm sorry to tell you. All right, let's take a look at the precipitation here. Here's the latest precipitation outlooks for days 1 through 7. You can see still expecting this very heavy rainfall in Texas up through Kentucky. There could be isolated flooding. Similar deal here in the Carolinas. Could be some isolated flooding. Reports with that as well. 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. Above average temperatures from Chicago back through Oklahoma City, Dallas, even into the Northeast, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Philadelphia, New York City. Above average temperatures on the 6 to 10 day outlook. And watch what happens here on the 8 to 14 day outlook. Huge area of well above average temperatures. You're going to see temperatures into the 80s potentially multiple days, like Chicago, Cincinnati, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. You come down here to Nashville, it's going to be well above average. But look in the western region. The below average temperatures, which I was telling you about, are going to stay intact. And you're also going to see below average temperatures in places like Alaska as well. So that's something we're going to have to watch. All right, precipitation. Below average for 6 to 10 days for much of the east. The only place this could be slightly off is in the southeast. That above average or normal average, I would probably slide that up into Georgia, maybe South Carolina and the Florida Panhandle, just because there's still some uncertainty as to just where this thing is going to stall. And it's possible it does stall a little bit more northwest, because sometimes that does happen with these cutoff-like systems. The Pacific Northwest, unsettled weather for you. No major systems, but it's going to be nuisance, unsettled, rain in the lower elevations, some snow in the mountain areas, and that's to be expected at this time of year. It is spring, and you still do get some unsettled weather at this time of year. Southwest Texas is where you have to go for some above average precipitation. 8 to 14 days. Above average in the west, slightly above average where we need it from Texas on up through the plains. Like I said, end of next week would be the next potential severe weather threat, and that's so far out, we're not concerned about that yet. The east, below average for much of the east, and near normal in Florida and Louisiana. All right, that does it for today's long-range leap, we'll call this. Hope you found this video informative. I hope you enjoy the fact that there's going to be a period of quieter weather next week. And if you like warmer weather, for much of the country, this is good for you. If you're on spring break down in Florida next week, sorry to inform you about the unsettled weather that's coming for multiple days. Hopefully we can clear that maybe by the middle to later part of next week. And until next time, hit the thumbs up on this video. If you want to see more content like this on my channel, hit the subscribe button down below. We might do a short update later on, if need be, if there's any significant amount of tornado threats. But until then, see you all again next time. Thanks for watching.